Hi, and so the winner on the poll as to which topic should be used for the discussion WoW video today was improving leveling in WoW. Blizzard, obviously they made some improvements in terms of the limited zone scaling, well, a year ago, but they've also, in the last few months, said that they really want to take a proper look at the leveling process, and they've described it as a major long-term project. So what I'm doing this video is to discuss a few areas. I'm going to try and identify what I see as the 3 key problems for leveling right now. Don't worry, the length of leveling is not one of them. That's a side issue. I'm going to try and discuss what I think might be suitable solutions. It will occasionally allude to other games, but I also recognise just because a feature is really good in one game doesn't mean it would translate to World of Warcraft particularly well either. So the first problem is, I think the storylines do not give you a good grounding into Warcraft lore. I just think if you had a new player leveling up all the way up, no booster or anything like that, they just leveled themselves all the way up to 120, I don't think that they'd have the basic, what I would call knowledge for a Warcraft based player on a number of issues. So for example, in Cataclysm, they completely changed the 1 to 60 content. And that 1 to 60 content was all about old gods and the return of Neltharion. But actually, playing through that and playing through those zone storylines, I don't believe you get any real information about old gods or the Black Dragonflight or Neltharion himself, quite frankly. It's, you know, and I think each individual zone does have a coherent storyline. It's not that I think it's a mess, although I thought it was better when it technically was a mess. I think you learnt more in the vanilla leveling. But anyway, and so it has a coherent storyline. The problem is the leveling process doesn't have a coherent education into Warcraft lore. So what I would prefer is if Blizzard took a step back and thought to themselves, okay, what are the important stories in Warcraft? What are the ones people should really know about? Quite frankly, go through their own books, go through the Warcraft Chronicles books. What are the major storylines? And then pick suitable zones to tell that storyline as a story arc. I've discussed this in the past. Now, a game that actually sort of does something very similar to this is Star Wars The Old Republic. This has changed a lot. In fact, it's quite incredible how many MMOs over time have changed their leveling experience to take account of the changes in the game. World of Warcraft is the one that's really, in this respect, got left behind. So what happens in Star Wars is there's a whole load of quests. All the quests you used to be able to do are still there when you go to different worlds. But what's right in your face are 2 major quest lines. There's the class quest line. Now, we don't have that in WoW. You know, people may lament that, but that's not going to happen. But then there's the main story arc for that world you're going to, which in WoW terms we would call a zone. And it's very in your face, big purple icon to say this is an important quest, take this quest. And there are other quests as well, but they're a bit out of the way. You can easily bypass them. You can easily not even notice quite a lot of them. Some of them you'll come across, but again, it's very clear that you don't really need them. And you can do the main story arc, which will teach you all about that main story. And that'll give you enough experience to level up as well. So you don't need to do the side ones, but you could do if it was interesting to you, because there's scaling in that as well. So it doesn't matter if you stay longer in one particular world, because when you go to the next, it's all scaling up anyway. That one I would definitely do something like that. Now, what I've suggested in the past is I'd go even further. So I would, with my main zone story arcs, have it attached to a particular part of Warcraft lore, and mix a bit of modern stuff in as well, of course. But go from the angle of want to teach these players something about our rich lore, as they call it, even though they keep changing it. But at the end of it, I know you can't do this on every zone, it would be too much work, but for particularly, for story arcs for particularly crucial parts of the lore, I would even design a single player scenario for the end of it, where it's almost like, like a boss type fight or an encounter. Maybe using the smart NPC, so you can almost go in as a party, and you can and you can actually take part in what might be a proper boss fight. And depending on what role you are, the other NPCs will take other roles, and all again sort of make an occasion of it. Just every now and then. You wouldn't be able to do it in every zone. The second problem is one for which I think a lot of people will lament, is you get no acknowledgement at all, no achievement for gaining a level. The game has changed a great deal over the years. What used to happen is from level 10 onwards, every level you would get a talent point. And also every now and then you'd get a new skill, as you do now, a new ability, but you didn't automatically get it. You would have to go to the class trainer. And you may not even know if you've got one waiting. You can sort of see now in advance. I suppose you could then. But you'd have to go to Stormwind or Orgrimmar, wherever, to see the class trainer. And that made a bit of an occasion for it. It might have been annoying. It might have been annoying to go back there. I'm not saying it wasn't a good decision to do. What we do now, where we have the new talent trees, and Blizzard certainly had a good reason for doing that. And also just giving us our abilities when we hit a certain level and removing the spell ranks. All of these had very good reasons. But what it's done is to take the sense of occasion out of gaining a level. In fact, since they brought level scaling in, there are some people who feel less special when they level up, weaker as they level up. Because unless you've got scaling leveling gear in the form of heirloom gear, and even that doesn't cover every slot, when you ding, your relatively static, if not actually static, stats, particularly the secondary stats, stay as they are. But they're now worth as a percentage less. So you have a certain crit rating, your crit percentage, which is what matters for interaction with abilities, is less. Haste, same thing. Hit doesn't exist. Behave yourself. These secondary stats make you weaker. But the mobs you're fighting, you're in the middle of fighting, well, they've just gone up a level. And they're stronger with that extra level, but you're not. So you now feel weaker. And that's not a problem with scaling. That's a problem with just putting scaling in and nothing else as part of a sort of a holistic leveling plan. Now, in terms of what you can do about this, what I would personally do, and I suggested something along these lines before, I would keep the modern talent system. I'm not saying we should go back to the old talent system. However, I would use the old talent system for something else. And I'd combine it with this gaining spells. Spells just popping up in your spell book does nothing for the sense of occasion. So how can we then use that as a sense of occasion? So have an old style talent tree, which actually will just be called a skill tree. The talent levels that we have now, keep them as they are. 15, 30, 45, 60 and so on. Keep those as they are. But have a skill tree. So... and this could be from level 1. You spend skill, well, level 2, I suppose. Spend skill points. So every level you get a skill point, and you use it initially. Of course, you'd use it to give yourself an ability. It may be a passive ability. It may be an active ability. Now, of course, we not have enough abilities just to do this every level. So not all of your skill points will be spent on getting a new ability. What it would do is, when you get a new ability, it will give you a weakened version of it. And then you can spend potentially up to another, say, 5 skill points on making it stronger. Or, because it'll be a skill tree, you could take a different route and come back to it. So maybe, let's say, at a particular level, I use a skill point and give myself Holy Light. Okay, it's a Holy Paladin. And then I think to myself, but I'm all right with it just being in this weakened form at the moment. I'll go and get other abilities and make those better, and I'll come back to spending those skill points on beefing it up later on. So the idea would be, because it's skills, because it's spells, by the time you finish leveling, everyone's at the same point. So it doesn't matter what route you took, you get to the same point, a bit like with the Legion artifact trees. But you can choose which abilities you get in which order and which ones you want to strengthen as you level up, and therefore tailor it to the particular way you want to level. So not only does it give you a little bit of choice in terms of how you level, but it adds a little bit of that sense of occasion, because each level you will be going into that tree and you will be spending a point and making a decision about how your character is going to grow. All right. which would be no difference to the old talent tree system, only we get to keep the new talent tree. Now, downsides with that, of course, the obvious one is it's not easy to future-proof it. Because obviously, let's say we were to implement this system now, or let's say we'd implemented it in Legion, because I don't know exactly how they're going to do the next expansion. So this was the case, so that you'll end up at level 100 with all those skills in place. So now you're thinking, well, now we had to level from 100 to 110 in Legion. What would we do? Or let's say it finishes at 110, just to make it easier in modern times. So in BFA, we level from 110 to 120. Well, leveling from 110 to 120, okay, we weren't getting something each level, but now we've stopped getting something. Our sense of occasion has now gone. They could maybe borrow one of their own ideas from Warlords of Draenor. In Warlords of Draenor, what happened was they picked certain abilities to just change in nature. And every couple of levels, an ability, you didn't choose anything, but an ability changed. I would do the same thing, because every expansion, I don't approve of this, but they change classes every expansion just for the hell of it, which means certain core abilities change their nature in some way. Now, rather than just having them completely change their nature across the board, what if they kept them the same until you got a particular level in the new expansion and then it's changed? So if they want to change something like Frostbolt for mages in some way, but they keep it so that Frostbolt works the same way as it has done up until the new expansion, then you start leveling in that, and at a particular level, Frostbolt changes. Again, there's no choice in there, but at least you're giving some of those levels a sense of occasion. Now, in WoD, what they did, as I say, they did this every 2 levels, which means every other level you're getting nothing at all. So that's not ideal. But then what I would also do is go back to a system, because another thing I don't like is the explosion of levels. Go back to what they did for a couple of expansions, whereas instead of gaining 10 levels, just gain 5 levels, and then you could just have 5 abilities that change their nature. And, you get one of those change in each level. That would, again, give it a little bit of a sense of occasion. Yes, you're not picking anything, which is not ideal. Now, another thing, and this comes from Elder Scrolls Online that you can also do, is what they do when you gain levels is you get something, a little present, you claim. And it might be a piece of gear suitable for leveling. It may be an experience scroll. Some people would definitely like that. Could be some consumables, some potions or something like that. Could be some trade goods. All right, you just get a little something. Sometimes it's just gold, just something as you go through certain levels. There might even be special levels where Blizzard just give you a pet or a special mount to commemorate those important levels as well. Obviously not loads of them all the way through, but that could be something to encourage the mount and pet collectors to go back and level another character. They're always looking for ways to try and get us to level all the way from the start again, aren't they? You could do that. It could be something that's not applied retroactively, but you've got to level a new character up to get those things. So, that would work. It wouldn't work on its own. Just getting a nice little present wouldn't work on its own, because I think you do need, when you're leveling up, something that in a very tangible way increases the power of your character. But this would also be nice. It would just be a nice little thing. Incidentally, in Elder Scrolls Online, they also use a similar system to get you to log in each day. In World of Warcraft, they try and do that, or every few days, with the emissary caches, which is a little bit oppressive, but a bit more involved. So there's arguments both ways. What they do in ESO is each month there's like a calendar, and it's like each day you log in, you can see which item you get. But if you miss a few days out, you don't miss those items out. You keep going along, because the best items are towards the end. So it's really trying to encourage you to log in each day. But in a way that only takes you a few minutes, and it does get you logging in. And as I say, is less oppressive, but also less involved. I don't know, you could argue, well, isn't it better to be encouraged to go in and actually go out into the world rather than just log on, claim something and log back off again? There's arguments both ways there. But for the leveling thing, I definitely think it is a good idea. I don't think too many people would disagree with that. Now, problem 3, third one for me, is the big one. A huge one in terms of attracting new players in particular. What always concerns me is you look at the advertisements for new expansion. Blizzard announced the new expansion. They do the thing where they advertise the new features. So BFA, we've had things like island expeditions, war fronts. You know, we've got the Azerite gear system. You know, 3, you know, selling points really. None of that has any purpose in the leveling game. It's like the leveling game is completely different to the end game. So someone looking at these features coming out going, oh, great, that sounds good. I'll play World of Warcraft. Then they start leveling through and they don't get any of that. They don't get island expeditions. They don't get war fronts. They don't get world quests even. They don't get Azerite gear. But is that how it has to be? I don't think that is how it has to be. When you're leveling, I see nothing to stop island expeditions being done by people leveling up. In just the same ways when you're leveling up, you can do battlegrounds and dungeons. You know, have level brackets, of course. But I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to do them. And you think to yourself, okay, so, yeah, all right. Well, sometimes there's cosmetic rewards from those. And it's now, we've got the technology to scale that down. So if it's armor that has stats on it, can just scale down to where you are, but you're still able to collect that transmog. So that could be really good. And then you'd be thinking to yourself, but, you know, the main reason for islands is, for a lot of people, artifact power. Your artifact power is no use to you. Why not? Why can't we have Azerite gear as well? No reason not to have Azerite gear. You know, you could get little bits of it just specifically for leveling. Don't put a lot of effort into designing the traits for it. Have them entirely passive if you want. But just to get you used to the system. You know, so you can get artifact power from, especially if they want to keep it to stay. We've had artifact power in Legion. We've got artifact power in BFA. I'm guessing even though they'll change how we use it, they'll still have artifact power in the next expansion. Because as far as I can tell, it does what they want it to do. Or they think it does. And so, you know, it's in the game. So why not get smaller amounts, of course, as we're leveling up? Not the sort of thing it's worth saving for level cap. But and use that to spend on an Azerite piece of gear, which you just get from, you know, maybe completing story arcs in zones. Or maybe every now and then for a level, your little level reward gives you a piece of Azerite gear. Why not? Why not do that? And you know, so you could easily do that as well. As for war fronts, let's be honest, war fronts are not the most challenging thing, and we can scale both players and gear. I see no reason not to allow people into Warfront. I wouldn't even bother with level brackets on that one, quite frankly. The most basic form of Warfront, which is the one we have to start at the start of the expansion. Just let any old... I don't care it's a level 120 if there's a level 5, or maybe, you know, start level 10, whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, there's a level 10 in there that's scaled up, not even monkeys. At the end of the day, all you need is warm bodies to win that thing anyway. And your reward can just scale down. But again, you're able to collect the transmogs on it. And that way, a new player, yes, okay, they may have to get to level 10, but that's not going to take that long. But they're then in the BFA. Yes, they're not doing the new zones, granted. Even though I am more in favour of full scaling. Okay, they do the scaling brackets, and I know there's popular support for that as well. So I'm not going to say that's them defying the will of the player base. So they won't be able to do the new zones. They're not really doing the new story. But there is nothing to stop them doing island expeditions, war fronts, getting Azerite gear, and even putting some world quests in. You know, into some zones. Put a few world quests in. It's only the same as the quests that are there anyway. They're just the sort of ones that you could make repeatable. As you're scaling it all anyway. What's wrong with that? Could easily do that. So those are some of the things I'd be focusing on if I were Blizzard. Obviously, they're not telling us what they're focusing on. Annoyingly, they haven't even told us what they perceive as the problems with it that they're wishing to solve. But then, of course, they don't want our opinions anyway. But hopefully you were interested in mine. If you were, then don't forget to click the like button if you found it interesting. Subscribe for further content. Share with others who might also be interested. Comment down below, of course, and until next time, I'll see you later.